or at the root of the chess master skill is that he or she simply has a richer vocabulary of trucks to recognize, which is why it is so rare for anyone to achieve world-class status in chess or any other field without years of experience. Even Bobby Fischer, perhaps the greatest chess prodigy of all time, had been playing intensely for 9 years before he was recognized as a grandmaster at age 15. Contrary to all the old wisdom that chess is an intellectual activity based on analysis, many of the chess master's important decisions about which move to make happens in immediate act of perceiving the board, like the chicken sexer who looks at the chick and simply sees its gender, or the SWAT officer who immediately notices the bomb. The chess master looks at the board and simply sees the most promising move. The process usually happens within 5 seconds, and you can actually see it transpiring in the brain. Using magnetoencephalography, a technique that measures the weak magnetic fields given off by the thinking brain. Researchers have found the higher rated chess players are more likely to engage the frontal and parietal cortices of the brain when they look at the board, which suggests that they are recalling information from long-term memory. Lower ranked players are more likely to engage in medial temporal lobes, which suggests that they are encoding new information. The experts are interpreting the present board in terms of their massive knowledge of past ones. The lower ranked players are seeing the board as something new. Though chess might seem like a trivial subject for psychologists to study, it is, after all, just a game. A group believed that his experiments with Chessmaster had much larger implications. He argued that expertise in the field of shoemaking, painting, building, or confectionery is the result of the same accumulation of experiential linkings. According to Erickson, what we call expertise is really just a vast amount of knowledge, pattern-based retrieval and planning mechanisms acquired over many years of experience in the associated domain. In other words, a great memory isn't just byproduct of experience. It is the essence of expertise. Whether we realize it or not, we are all like those chess masters and chicken sexers, interpreting the present in light of what we've learned in the past and letting our previous experience shape not only how we perceive our world, but also the moves we end up making in it. Too often we talk about our memories as if they were banks into which we deposit new information when it comes in, and from which we withdraw old information when we need it. But that metaphor doesn't reflect the way our memories really work. Our memories are always with us, being shaped by the information flowing through our senses in a continuous feedback loop. Everything we see, hear, smell is inflected by all things we've seen, heard, and smelled in the past. In ways as obscure as sexing chickens and as profound as diagnosing an illness, who we are and what we do is fundamentally a function of what we remember. But if interpreting the world and acting in it are rolled up in the act of remembering, what about Ed and Lucas and other mental athletes I met? How did this supposedly simple technique called the memory palace grant them expert memories without there being experts in anything? Even if Erickson and his grand student wouldn't give me the result of all the tests I spent 3 days laboring on, I took enough notes on my performance to escape with some sense of where my baseline ability stood. My digit span was about 9, above average, but nothing extraordinary. My ability to memorize poetry was abysmal, and I had not a clue when Confucius lived. Though I did know what a carburetor was for. When I got back from Tallahassee, there was an email waiting in my inbox from Ed. Hey there, star pupil. I know that you've been keeping training to the Florida person have until after the Florida people have put you through your place. Very well done. That's admirable in at least the sense that it will make for better science. But the next championships aren't a million miles away, so we're going to have to begin preparing yourself pronto. Better get some pep from me now. You need to get your head towards the grindstone and enjoy leaving it there. For the most forgetful man in the world. Having met some of the best memories in the world, I decided that my next step would be try to seek out the worst. What better way to try to begin understanding the nature and meaning of human memory than investigate its absence? I went back to Google and in search of Ben Pridmore's counterpart in the record books of forgetfulness, and dug up an article in the Journal of Neuroscience about an 84-year-old retired lab technician called EP, whose memory extended back only as far as his most recent thought. He had one of the most severe cases of amnesia ever documented. A few weeks after returning to Tallahassee, I phoned up a neuroscientist and memory researcher named Larry Square at the University of California, San Diego, and the San Diego VA Medical Center Squirrel Square had been studying EP for over a decade and agreed to bring me along on one of his visits to the bright bungalow in suburban San Diego, where EP lives with his wife. We traveled there with Jen Praskino, the research coordinator in Square's lab, who visits EP regularly to administer cognitive tests, even though Francino has been to EP's house some 200 times. He greets her as a total stranger every time. EP is 6'2", with perfectly parted white hair and unusually long ears. He's personable, friendly, generous. He laughs a lot. He seems at first down with me in Square's office. He seems at first like your average genial grandfather. Francino, a tall, athletic blonde, sits down with me in Square opposite EP at his dining room table and asks a series of questions that are meant to gog his basic knowledge and common sense. She quizzes him about the continent Brazil's the number of weeks in a year, and the boiling temperature of water. She wants to demonstrate that a battery of cognitive tests has already proved EP has a working knowledge of the world. His IQ is 103, and his short-term memory is entirely unimpaired. He patiently answers the question all correctly, with roughly the same sense of bemusement I imagine I would have if a total stranger walked into my house and earnestly asked me if I knew the boiling point of water. What is the thing to do if you find an envelope in the street that is sealed, addressed, and has a stamp on it? Francisco asks, well, you put it in the mailbox. What else? He chuckles and shoots me a knowing, sidelong glance, as if to say, do these people think I am an idiot? But sensing that the situation calls for politeness, he turns back to Francino and adds, well, that's a really interesting question you got there. Really interesting. He has no idea he's heard it many times before. Why do we cook food? Because it's raw. The word raw carries his voice clear across the tonal register. His bemusement giving way to incredulity. I asked EP if he knows the name of the last president. I'm afraid it slipped my mind. How strange. Does the name Bill Clinton sound familiar? Of course, I know Clinton. He's an old friend of mine, a scientist. A good guy. I worked with him, you know. He sees my eyes widen in disbelief and stops himself. Unless, that is, there's another Clinton around. That's you're thinking of. Well, you know, the last president was named Bill Clinton also. He was Albie. He slapped his thigh and chuckled, but doesn't seem all that embarrassed. Who's the last president you remember? He takes a moment to search his brain. Let's see, there was Franklin Roosevelt. Ever heard of John F. Kennedy? Kennedy, I'm afraid I don't know him. France, interjects with another question. Why do we study history? Well, we study history to know what happened in the past. But why do we want to know what happened in the past? Because it's just interesting, frankly. In November 1992, EP came down with what seemed as a mild case of the flu. For 5 days, he lay in bed, feverish and lethargic, unsure of what was wrong. Well inside his head, a vicious virus known as herpes simplex was chewing its way through his brain, coring it like an apple. By the time the virus had run its course, 2 walnut-sized chunks of brain matter in EP's medial temporal lobes had disappeared, and with them most of his memory. The virus struck with freakish precision, and the medial temporal lobes, there's one on each side of the brain, including the hippocampus, and several regions that together perform the magical feat of turning our perceptions into long-term memories. Memories aren't actually stored in the hippocampus. They reside elsewhere in the brain, in the brain's corrugated outer layer. The neocortex, about the hippocampal area, makes them stick. EP's hippocampus was destroyed, and without it, he is like a camcorder without a working tape head. He sees, but he doesn't record. EP has 2 types of amnesia. Anterograde, which means he can't form new memories, and retrograde, which means he can't recall memories either. At least not since about 1950. His childhood, his service in the Merchant Marine, World War II, all that is perfectly vivid. But as far as he knows, gas costs a quarter a gallon, and man never took that small step onto the moon. Even though EP has been an amnesic for a decade and a half, and his condition has neither worsened nor improved, there's still much that Squeer and his team hope to learn from him. A case like this is which nature performs a cruel but perfect experiment, and is, to put it crassly, a major boon to science.